Hello, beautiful people! We're continuing our Everything You Need to Know series, and today we're talking about Heartrunes. If you don't know what a Heartrune is, or you don't know which one you should use for your build, you've come to the right place. We're going to talk about what the Heartrune is, how to unlock them, what they do, and how to get them. So just sit back, relax, maybe grab a notepad, and I'll teach you everything you need to know about Heartrunes. Let's start with the basics. What is a Heartrune? A Heartrune is an extra equipment slot that acts as a sort of ultimate ability for your character. You charge it up by doing damage to enemies, and then you press G if you haven't changed your keybind to activate it. After the ability is done, you're going to need to charge up your Heartrune again to use it. You can see my Heartrune on the bottom right of my screen next to my abilities. When the hexagon is filled with purple, your Heartrune is charged and ready to be used. I have on a Detonate Heartrune right now, so you'll see me activate my ultimate ability, start glowing, and then explode. Heartrunes are not tied to any type of weapon and instead have their own independent damage-dealing capabilities. You can change your Heartrune at any time. No matter what build you're running, you should have a Heartrune. It's going to be extra damage or extra protection, and both of those are great. We're going to go over which ones are good for specific roles or builds towards the end of the video, but feel free to skip ahead to that section using the video chapters. I'm not going to make you sit and listen to all of this information if you don't want to. Now that we know what a Heartrune is, let's talk about how to unlock the Heartrune slot. Unlike our other equipment slots, we are not automatically given a Heartrune. We have to unlock it through a very short side quest that unlocks at around level 62 after going through part of the Brimstone main story questline. The quest, which is appropriately named Secrets of the Heart Gem, is located in the northeast corner of Brimstone Sands and can be easily accessed from the Crow's Nest teleport in Shattered Mountain. This quest is going to take you about 5 to 10 minutes to complete, depending on how fast you go. But either way, it's a very short time commitment. Not that there's anything wrong with long-term commitment. Right, guys? The background footage of this video is just me going through the quest, so it also serves as a sort of real-time quest guide. So now we know what Heartrunes are and how to unlock the slot, but we still don't know what they do. Let's talk about it. In total, there are 27 different legendary Heartrunes in the game, 9 different types of Heartrunes, and 3 categories that fall under each type: Cunning, Stalwart, and Brutal. I know that might be a little confusing. For example, if you have the Detonate Heartrune, there are 3 different types of it: the Cunning Detonate Heartrune, the Stalwart Detonate Heartrune, and the Brutal Detonate Heartrune, and they all do something a little different. Now, I'm going to go through all of these, but I'm going to do it fast because it is a lot of information. I will have all of it on the screen as text, so feel free to skip around and pause to read if I say something a little too quickly. First up, there's Primal Fury. This Heartrune allows you to stagger opponents within 3 meters of you and deal 150% Heartrune damage. What that actually means, I don't know, don't ask me, I don't like math. After that happens, you turn into a beast like Hulk mode and your light attacks deal 120% damage, your heavy attack becomes a leap that also deals 120% damage, and it's going to knock down opponents for 10 seconds. You can use the Heartrune again to cancel the effect if you want. So, like I said earlier, there are 3 categories of Heartrunes: Cunning, Stalwart, and Brutal. Each category has 2 perks. One perk is shared by all of them, and the second perk is unique. For Primal Fury, each one is going to extend the duration of your Hulk mode by 10 seconds. Cunning is going to give you grit while in Hulk mode. Stalwart gives you Fortify in Hulk mode, but also weakens you. You take less damage and deal less damage, and if you take damage, your Hulk mode gets extended 10 seconds. Brutal is going to give you Empowered while in Hulk mode, but also give you Rend. This means that you deal 20% more damage, but your armor is reduced by 20%. Dealing damage will extend Beast mode by 10 seconds. Next up is the Devourer. This Heartrune summons a Devourer, as you could have guessed, up to 15 meters away that deals 40% Heartrune damage and pushes back and knocks down enemies in a 2.5 meter radius where it spawns. After it does all this, it's going to bite everyone 2 meters around it and deal 200% Heartrune damage. All of the categories of the Devourer Heartrune inflict 20% slow for 5 seconds on enemies hit by the bite attack of the Devourer when it spawns. The Cunning Heartrune of the Devourer Devouer's bite poisons the target, which deals 15% Heartrune damage every second for 7 seconds. The Stalwart gives you uninterruptible to staggers for 5 seconds after your Devourer damages a target, but you also get weakened, which reduces your damage dealt by 20% while it's active. The Brutal version makes the first attack of the Devourer deal 200% Heartrune damage, and it pulls the targets in, but there is no knockdown effect when the Devourer spawns. The third Heartrune is the Firestorm. Firestorm sends out a 2-meter radius tornado of fire that will travel up to 17 meters if there's nothing to block its path, and it's going to deal 100% Heartrune damage and burn any target that it hits. The burn deals 30% Heartrune damage per second every second for 6 seconds, and any friendlies inside of the Firestorm will gain 10% in power for 6 seconds. All 3 versions of the Firestorm Heartrune inflict weaken on hit that reduces the target's damage by 15% for 8 seconds. The Cunning version gives haste to friendlies in the Firestorm, which increases their movement speed by 15% for 8 seconds. The Stalwart version cleanses all damage over time effects on friendlies who are hit by the Firestorm and reduces burn damage by 15% of Heartrune damage. The Brutal version makes the Firestorm travel faster and deal 200% weapon damage, but the Firestorm no longer applies burn. The fourth Heartrune is Grasping Vines. This Heartrune summons vines around you that deal 100% Heartrune damage and root enemies within a 4-meter radius for 3 seconds. All 3 versions of the Heartrune inflict weaken on hit, which reduces the target's damage dealt by 20% for 8 seconds. The Cunning version of this Heartrune gives the vines the Leeching perk, which heals you for 20% of your damage done to rooted targets. The Stalwart version gives you Fortify when the Heartrune is activated, which increases armor by 20%. However, it will also reduce outgoing damage by 20% for 5 seconds. And the Brutal version inflicts Rend on hit, which reduces the target's armor by 20% for 5 seconds, but it also reduces your stamina regeneration by 50% for 5 seconds. Moving on to number 5, we have Stoneform. This Heartrune hardens you with layers of stone that cleanse all crowd control debuffs and gives you immunity to stagger and crowd control debuffs for 5 seconds. All versions of this Heartrune give you Fortify on activation, which increases your armor by 10% for 5 seconds. The Cunning version will give you an additional 10% armor for 5 seconds per hit taken, up to 30%. The Stalwart version heals you for 75% Heartrune damage per second while it's active, but reduces outgoing damage by 20%. The Brutal version makes Stoneform explode when it ends automatically or when you force end it by pressing your Heartrune keybind again, and is going to deal 200% Heartrune damage to all targets within 3 meters, but it also reduces its duration by 2 seconds. The next Heartrune is Dark Ascent. On activation, you fly up into the air and are temporarily invulnerable, and then when you get back to the ground, you stagger and deal 100% Heartrune damage to all targets within 3 meters. You can press the Heartrune ability or any basic attack input when you are in the air to make yourself fall immediately. All versions of this Heartrune apply the Leeching effect, which heals you for 100% of the damage dealt by Dark Ascent. The Cunning Dark Ascent rune inflicts slow on hit, which reduces the target's movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds. This Stalwart version gives you Fortify on up to 3 hits, which increases armor by 10%, up to a maximum of 30%, but it also reduces outgoing damage by 10% for 5 seconds per hit. The Brutal version of Dark Ascent makes the Heartrune deal 150% Heartrune damage, but it no longer staggers. The 7th Heartrune is Cannon Blast, and as the name implies, it summons and fires a literal cannon that does 100% Heartrune damage. All versions of this Heartrune inflict burn on hit, which deals 10% Heartrune damage per second for 5 seconds. The Cunning version makes it so that enemies cannot block the cannonball if it passes through them. The Stalwart version makes the cannonball knock down enemies it hits, but only deals 30% Heartrune damage. And the Brutal version makes the cannonball explode on impact and deals damage to all targets within 3 meters, but it also reduces its damage by 20%. Next we have the Detonate Heartrune, a personal favorite of mine. When activated, you charge yourself with explosive energy for 3 seconds and then explode, dealing 100% Heartrune damage to all targets within 5 meters. All versions of this Heartrune give you 30% movement speed while you're charging up. The Cunning version gives you 15% outgoing damage while charging, but reduces explosion damage by 20%. The Stalwart version applies the Leeching effect, which heals you for 50% of the damage dealt by the explosion, but it reduces its damage to 30%. The Brutal version gives you 20% explosion damage, but your applied rend while charging, which reduces your armor by 50%. And finally, we have the Bile Bomb Heartrune. When you activate this Heartrune, you vomit something horrible that creates a 3.5 meter radius disease cloud on impact and lasts for 3 seconds. Any enemies that enter the toxic cloud are given a debuff that deals 100% Heartrune damage every second and reduces incoming healing by 30% and outgoing healing by 15% for 8 seconds. The cloud sticks to enemies if they are directly hit by it. All versions of this Heartrune inflict slow on hit, which reduces the target's movement speed by 20% for 3 seconds. The cunning version applies exhaust on hit, which reduces the enemy's stamina regeneration by 30%. The stalwart version heals any friendly who hits an afflicted target 20% of the damage that they deal, but it also reduces incoming healing by 15%, outgoing healing by 7.5%, and on top of that, the Bile Bomb no longer has a damage over time effect. Last but not least, the brutal version of this Heartrune increases incoming healing reduction by 50%, outgoing healing reduction to 25%, and damage to 150% per second, but the Bile Bomb will no longer create a cloud when it lands. Oh man, that was a lot of information. And if you were following along, we just completed the quest. Perfect timing. Now that we know what the Heartrunes are and what they do, let's talk about how to get them. You get minor Heartrunes by doing expeditions in the Sandworm raid for the Devourer Heartrune specifically. On the screen you can see where they all come from if you want to farm a specific Heartrune for your build. Minor Heartrunes are a guaranteed drop every time you do an expedition of any level, and the Sandworm rune drops on the first kill each week. Once you have minor Heartrunes, they can be upgraded at the stone cutting station at level 1 stone cutting. Don't worry guys, you don't have to skill. To make a major Heartrune, you'll need the Heartrune you want to upgrade, 5 wooden coins, 5 gypsum orbs, 5 corrupted lodestone, and 3 sulfur. Keep in mind that you do need the Heartrune to be in your inventory, not in the Heartrune slot, and unlocked in order for it to show up as a craft, so take it out of the slot if it's in there and make sure it's not locked. To make a legendary 625 gear score Heartrune, you'll need the major version of the Heartrune first. All legendary Heartrune upgrades require 10 wooden coins, 10 gypsum orbs, and 10 sulfur. You'll also have to decide which type of Heartrune you want to make: cunning, stalwart, or brutal. Depending on the type of Heartrune that you want to make, you're going to need a few extra materials. You'll need 50 vials of suspended Azoth to make a cunning Heartrune, 5 Writ of Adventure to make a stalwart Heartrune, and 5 corrupted lodestone for a brutal Heartrune. Like I said earlier, these legendary versions of the Heartrunes are 625 gear score. If you want to further upgrade your Heartrune to 700 gear score, you'll need the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion, have the 625 version in your inventory, and 50 gypsum orbs, 10 runic voidstone, and 50 vials of suspended Azoth. This is very expensive, and honestly, most people don't upgrade to 700. It's not really worth it. And when you OPR, it's going to get scaled to 700 anyways. Everywhere else, it's not really going to matter a whole bunch. I know that you're probably sick of hearing the word Heartrune at this point, and trust me, so am I. So let's wrap this up and talk about which Heartrunes are popular for different builds and specific content. So, tanks pretty much use Stalwart Stoneform everywhere, PvP and PvE. This allows them to escape crowd control effects and get some much needed extra healing in. And if you're wondering, crowd control effects are things like slows and stuns. And Fortify means extra armor, which is crucial for a busy tank build. Typically, healers run Stoneform Heartrunes, especially in PvP where healers are hard targeted. Being able to clear crowd control debuffs and having a little immunity is huge for survivability. For healing, the Cunning and Stalwart versions are both great options. In PvE, healers can use Brutal Detonate if they want to help contribute to big booty damage. Bruto Deto gives 20% more damage when you use it, while the other versions reduce the damage of the rune, so don't use those if you're trying to pump up those numbers. If you're DPS, you're going to use Heartrunes based on the content that you're trying to do. Most of the time, Brutal Detonate is the way to go just because of the raw damage factor, but there are some niche or very specific uses for many of the other runes. For example, in the Gorgon raid, a lot of DPS are using Brutal Grasping Vines to trap the Corvids because those angry birds are annoying as hell. Grasping Vines is also great in PvP, where trapping your target can either help you kill them faster or give you some space to get away. If you're purely really playing with ranged weapons, you might consider using the Cunning Cannon Blast rune, which does damage from a distance and can be good for finishing off targets in PvP. Brutal Bile Bomb is good for dungeons with nature mutations because it reduces healing. Nature mutations usually have the compost effects where when enemies die, they leave behind a healing circle that will heal other enemies, so Bile Bomb reduces that effect. Brutal Bile Bomb is also good for the last boss of Ennead. So basically, after you kill the second boss that spawns, you can Bile Bomb the boss. Normally when they revive for round 2, they have 50% of their health, but if you Bile Bomb, they'll only have 25%. That's pretty dang good. The Devourer Heartrune is good for stunning AoE clumps in PvP, but it's not really great for PvE. The Stalwart Firestorm Heartrune is a must-have for the Sandworm raid. The rune cleanses bleeds, and Sandworm has some pretty nasty ones. And poor Primal Fury just really isn't used anywhere. No hate, it's just not great. And finally, that's it. Oh my gosh. All you have to do is add your Heartrune to your gear slot and you are ready to rumble. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope this video helped you better understand Heartrunes. If you made it this far, type pizza pizza in the comments. As always, if you want to, like, subscribe, share, it helps me a lot, but most importantly, be kind to one another. See you next time, friends!